Today we're going to be comparing every LG OLED released in 2021. So LG is well known for their amazing OLED TVs. In fact, LG actually patented the OLED technology, and every OLED is using an LG panel. Now again, this year's TVs have been amazing, and I've managed to get my hands on a couple of them, and I've done separate reviews for them both. And I was going to do a video comparing the two of them, but then I had a thought, well actually, there's quite a lot to choose from. So we actually have 5 options in this year's OLED range. So I'm going to give you every difference and highlight the pros and cons to each one. Now there's many sizes on offer, and each size does cost a different amount. Therefore, when I do my price comparison, I'm going to base it on the one size that is on every single model, and that is the 77 inch. But what I'll also do is I'll put the cheapest size that you can get for each model too. So let's get started. First we have the A1. The A1 is LG's entry-level OLED. Now it posts a similar picture to a lot of its more expensive counterparts, but it is a lot cheaper and it is missing some features. Look, the A1 is a fantastic looking TV. Being an OLED, it has an infinite contrast ratio with those dark inky blacks. The design is very similar to the B1 and the C1. I mean, it's near identical. But the A1 doesn't share the nice center mounted stand that those two have. With the A1 you have these little legs. They're quite wide set, but it does make the TV sit a bit taller, which means if you're wanting a soundbar, that could be a good option for you. Picture wise, the A1 has a pretty poor peak brightness, and you could probably say it isn't bright enough to get the most out of a lot of HDR content. Because of this can also make reflections seem a little bit worse than they are, because it's not bright enough to overcome them. Now the response times on the TV are great, but they're not as good as some of the ones from the more expensive TVs. And the A1 is using a 60Hz panel, so it does 4K at 60 frames per second. This means it's not compatible with some gaming features that you might get on the next gen consoles or with a gaming PC like VRR, FreeSync or G-Sync. We do have 3 HDMI 2.0 ports, and that does include an enhanced audio return channel. This means if you do have a soundbar, you can link it to this and make use of the Dolby Atmos support. We do also have support for Dolby Vision and HDR10, which does complement this TV's fantastic picture. The A1 boasts the Alpha 7 Gen 4 processor, which is fairly decent. You can browse around with not too much issues. It's not quite as snappy as the more advanced A9 processor, which means it's not quite as capable as handling things like upscaling and motion smoothing quite as well as some of the other TVs. Next we have the B1. Now it's a very similar looking TV, but the obvious difference is the center mounted stand that replaces those little legs on the A1. Now that center mounted stand does look really nice. The only issue with it is that it does make the TV sit very low, so if you are planning on having a soundbar, you're going to struggle to get that in front of the TV. It's going to have to be on a different level. The B1 does bring some extra functionality that is missing from the A1, namely 2 4K 120Hz HDMI 2.1 ports. These bring with it support for VRR, Nvidia G-Sync and AMD FreeSync, and then you also get 2 extra HDMI 2.0 ports. Sound wise, the B1 brings in a couple of small subwoofers. It does just add that little extra bit of bass to the sound, which makes it seem a lot fuller than if you are watching on the A1. It's not going to be mind-blowing sound by any means, so I would still recommend getting yourself a soundbar. If you are going to go TV only, then the B1 is better. The B1 does get slightly brighter than the A1, with real scene brightness of 521 nits over the A1's 452 nits. To be honest, it's not really that noticeable. The B1 does have a slightly better screen finish that assists with reflections a bit better than the A1. Other than that, most things are pretty much the same, although on the B1 you don't get a 48-inch model. Now the C1. The LG C1 is LG's most popular OLED TV, and it is easy to see why. Firstly, you can see my full review of it here, but we'll get into some of the improvements right now. So with the C1, we have the largest choices of sizes. That's going from the 48-inch all the way up to the mammoth 83-inch. If you're going to be leaving this on its stand, just be aware it is quite a big one. It's arguably the nicest stand in the range, but it is a lot bigger than the B ones. It is just worth being aware of that if you do have a small unit. The C1 introduces LG's A9 Gen 4 processor, which is a step up from the A1 and the B1's A7. This is going to make the user interface experience a lot smoother and snappier, and it is also going to improve things like how the TV deals with upscaling and motion smoothing. The C1 also has 4 HDMI 2.1 ports, swapping out the two 2.0 ports that you get on the B1. So if you do need to make use of the extra 2.1 ports, maybe for consoles or gaming PCs or a whole array of different things, maybe this one is worth considering. Now the screen of the C1 is brighter again. The HDR real scene highlights is up to 628 nits over the B1's 521. It's not a huge difference, slightly noticeable from the B1, fairly noticeable from the A1. Above the C1 we have the G1. The first 3 TVs pretty much look and feel the same, just with some slight technical differences. The LG G1 is the first TV with an actual major difference in the design, losing the super thin top with the big booty at the back. The LG G1 is different. The G stands for gallery, and that is in a sense what it's meant to look like. LG opting for a more even shape so that when you wall mount it, it's flush to a wall like a canvas in a gallery. Now you can put this on a stand, but it's just little legs, and let's be honest, it was designed to be wall mounted. Wall mount it. It's available in 3 sizes, the 55-inch, the 65-inch and the 77-inch. But what are the real differences above the C1? Well, we have a slightly better 60-watt sound system with an extra 2 speakers. And the main advantage is LG's new Evo panel. It makes the OLED even brighter again. It has real scene highlights of 720 nits over the C1's 628 nits. Which, let's be honest, that's pretty good, especially if you compare it to the A1's 452 nits. Oh, and you also get hands-free voice control by saying "Hi LG" instead of just pressing the button on the remote. Lastly, in LG's range we have the Z1 or the Z1. So the Z1 is LG's 8K OLED, or as LG have put it, the zenith of LG OLED. It's 8K and comes in 2 sizes, a 77-inch that has to be wall mounted, or an 88-inch which comes with its own unique stand. It's basically its own TV unit. It has 4 HDMI 2.1 ports like the C1 and the G1, but they also support 8K at 60Hz as well as 4K at 120. It has the A9 processor like the other 2 to help with upscaling, but other than that, it's really just about the 8K panel. So that is all of them. But I hope I've ironed out all those differences from you, and I hope that you know now which TV is right for you. There are links in the description if you are looking to buy one of these, and there's also links to any of the reviews that I've done on some of the models, so please go ahead and click those. And in this video here, you will see one of my reviews of one of these TVs. See you in the next one. Whoop!